Mm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, what? Oh, where y'all come from? Oh, shoot. Didn't see y'all come from anywhere. I ain't gonna lie. Mm-mm. Well, look at it. It's dark again. No, that mean. Because I really don't. So, for what does that mean? No, stop. Welcome back, Wolfpack. It's your boy, Jay Wolf. And today we're going to do some more scary reactions. I got a couple suggestions from a guy named Jacob. I ain't going to say his last name. Wow. That was horrible. Wow. There we go. I've been chewing this for a minute. That's better. Been doing this for a while. What? I don't even know where that came from. Alright. Slice all that. I would suggest a couple of videos to react to from a guy named Jacob Rao because he actually gave me suggestions. If y'all want me to react to something, then leave them in the comments. Remember, I read every comment. For real, I read every comment. So if you got something for me to react to, then put it in the comments. Okay, it can be anything: scary, weird, terrifying, weird, funny, weird. Like, I want weird stuff, funny stuff, scary stuff, especially scary stuff. Honestly, if you got some scary stuff, then play some scary stuff. Tell me that. Now let me move this. And I swear I heard something knocking later last night. Let me start over. But bro, come on. And I'm gonna be eating my pizza. So I don't want nobody comment saying he's over there eating some pizza. Look at him. Look at him. Loser. What? How was that? But still, I'm gonna eat my pizza and I'm gonna watch this 25-minute video with y'all. I think it's 25 minutes. It's something. I just know some scary. It's a creepypasta, scary story. I ain't look at it. I didn't even search it up. I actually need to go. I have it saved. Don't worry. Ain't gonna be that much. I'm in rhyming on. Let's get into the video. I know y'all skipped it already.
But earning my nursing degree online gave me the flexibility to fit school into my life and prepare.
Oh, by the way, before we start this, shit. All right. By the way, before we start this, it's just a picture. It's not animated, so just listen to it. But my homeboy wanted me is to see my face, I guess, to see how if I cry. But I only if it gets too scary. That's the only reason. Let me stop. But let's get into it. I'm sorry, y'all. I ain't remember. Let me turn up the damn. Ah, damn. Today ain't my day. Not my day. Hold on, let me see. Reset that. I don't know. 40. No, that's good enough.
I can't name the specific clinic, but I work at a cutting-edge research facility that studies sleep disorders. Alongside our research, we also offer limited treatments where we try to identify or help people with sleep difficulties who haven't been able to get help elsewhere. One of the young people that I work with is a boy. I'm going to call Brian. He's around 12 years old and first came to us around a year ago with what appeared to be an unusual sleep disorder. Brian had spent most of his life diagnosed with oppositional defiance disorder and an antisocial personality disorder. For those of you who don't know those terms, that means that Brian is prone to violent and often hurtful behavior, often characterized by extreme resistance to discipline. Personally, I think he's quite sweet, but Brian has also stabbed 3 different children.
That's a demon child.
And was once caught testing a bear trap on local cats. Brian also has a remarkable intellect, but he is utterly disinterested in personal interactions of any kind. Amongst other things, he is fixated on the collection of weapons and traps. Left to his own devices, he has been known to steal everything from knives to the ingredients for gunpowder, and consistently demands survival manuals from local libraries and other items that he deems significant. Once he ran away and traveled over 100 miles to obtain a wildlife trap kept in a museum, apparently enamored with its unique hinge mechanism. Anyone who gets in the way of his collecting is at serious risk of being attacked, and because Brian is both intelligent and very patient, these attacks can be quite horrific. Just ask the teacher who found a sewing needle in her ham sandwich a month after she had confiscated his pocket knife. It took years of therapy before Brian's parents discovered that he was collecting these things to help him survive the night. Since that time, they observed him sleeping and he appeared normal enough. But Brian was adamant that he had taken these various devices into his room and dehammed them near as he fell asleep. His parents eventually gave in and let him take these strange objects to bed. When morning came, the strange things would be gone, presumably hidden away somewhere no adult knew of. At their wits' end and terrified that their son would never move past his strange fixation on dreams and weapons, Brian's parents finally brought him to me. I am a developmental psychologist specializing in sleep and dream disorders. Qualified in both CBT and neuroscience, I was tasked with working with Brian in the hope of understanding exactly why he is so different to other children. My conclusions are, frankly, insane. You see, it began with tests on Brian as he slept. Obviously, we had to allow him to take weapons with him into the sleep room. It was a hard sell into the ethics committee.
Hey, I'll be back. Y'all won't even tell. Sorry, I'm back. Had to put up my plate. That piece is good though, I ain't gonna lie. Alright, let's get back to the story.
But I was determined to get EEG readings on Brian's brain as he slept. And I knew the only way he would agree was if he had something to help him feel safe. Since then, he spent nearly every night of the last year in that room and working with me.
Sparkling water, my favorite.
And the thing is, Brian isn't sleeping. He looks like he's sleeping, but he's not. I know a sleeping brain, and he is absolutely not asleep. He is conscious. He lies with his eyes closed, but his brain does not enter even the slightest stage of sleep. He awakes refreshed, and he shows no signs of sleep deprivation. But neurologically speaking, Brian's brain never even comes close to sleep. In my experience, his activity most closely resembles that of PTSD patients asked to recount their traumatic experiences. Others from the clinic have said that Brian's brain shows shocking similarities to the brains of veteran soldiers, both in structure and activity.
Yeah, that's what we need to add in the middle of a goddamn story.
I racked my brain over this problem for 3 months. I tried every machine in the building, and in the end concluded that the results were accurate. That means that, providing the data is correct, Brian is the only human alive who actually doesn't sleep. I have since been advised to not publish these results scientifically, and I understand why. No one would believe me. Since then, I've augmented the neurological approach with a psychological one, which I suppose is a fancy way of...
By the way, he's not the only person alive that don't sleep. There's other people.
saying that I've spoken to Brian extensively. Normally, I give out lollipops during my sessions, but I found Brian oddly appreciative of UHC milk and charcoal briquettes. It took a long 5 weeks, but Brian finally opened up to me and revealed a most peculiar story. He says that every night when he goes to sleep, he dreams. He says these dreams occur the instant that he closes his eyes, and they end the instant that he opens them, come sunrise. But for every second that he lies down, he spends a corresponding second immersed in his dreams. He said that his dreams follow the rules of reality exactly. He describes them as 100% lucid with none of the plastic reality associated with normal dreaming. When I described my own dreams to him, Brian thought that it was hilarious and utterly bizarre. To him, There is one dream and it is continuous. It's all just one long nightly experience stretching back to his earliest memory. As he put it, if anywhere is the dream, it's here. There are flying metal birds here and pictures that flash stupid messages and people who don't care about being alive. But over there is only life and death. And I think that makes a lot more sense than any of this. Brian went on to tell me that he can take things into his dream. Anything he holds in his hand, he goes across with him. Worryingly, this is consistent with my observations. Whatever he takes into that room isn't there when he wakes up. His parents told me they thought that he had found a way of getting rid of the items during the night. But our sleeping rooms are secure, above ground, and have no windows. I don't know where he could put a half-gallon of kerosene or 30 meters of rope. But sure enough, whatever he takes in with him isn't there come morning. He simply puts these things under the covers, and poof, the sheets fall down and they disappear right before the camera, like a magic trick. I'm still not used to seeing it, but it happens, and I'm quite sure of that. On a hunch, I took Brian to an archery lesson and watched him hit every bullseye for 2 hours straight. Another time, I watched as he patiently sat me down and stitched up a wound I received moving a broken bed frame. He's fixed furniture around the clinic, killed passing birds with a homemade sling, and once made a knife out of flint he collected on a trip to the beach. His knowledge is extensive. His skills completely beyond what any normal child should have. When asked why this is, he tells me that when he lies down, he goes to a place without adults. He describes it as rich with life, but dangerous. The animals, he says, are like our animals but different. There is him in nature, and he fights for his survival tooth and nail. During one of our longest conversations, I asked if he ever saw other people in this world, to which he answered, early on, yes.
This is good.
They weren't good enough. Brian then gave me 6 names. I won't repeat them here, but they sounded real. And when I searched them, I managed to find scattered articles that mentioned just 2 children, aged 6 and 7, with the same names. They had apparently died in their sleep, when Brian would have only been 5. I took the photos to him, and he immediately nodded his head. She fell over and was taken first, he said while pointing to a young girl with a pink bow in her hair. She survived longer, he added while pointing to the next girl, but not by much. 3 children had died a month apart and thousands of miles away from each other. It didn't make any sense, but Brian was convinced that he knew them. Even stranger, the following day, he came in and gave me a pink lace. I went back to the clearing where she fell and I found it, he said, nodding to the muddy lace in his hand. It belonged to her. It was hard back then, but some older kids helped us before it took them. It was ragged and knotted and no longer a bow, but holding it in my hand I saw that it was an eerie match to the pink bow in the picture of that young girl. Confused and concerned, I asked, what took them? Mr. Tatler, he said. Mr. Tatler, I repeated. One of the other ones named it, I think, he said with a strange matter-of-factness. We grouped together at first, and one of the other boys said it reminded him of a monster from a book his father read. The monster in the book was called Mr. Tatler. Ever since then, that was what it was named. And Mr. Tatler tries to hurt you. Mr. Tatler has always hunted us, he said. Nothing else is like it. What does Mr. Tatler look like? I asked. Brian pursed his lips and looked thoughtful for a moment. Like an insect's idea of a god, he said, before carrying on reading his book on architecture. And it just roams this world, I asked, hunting you. Yes, he answered. I can't stay still too long. It never stops and it never rests. You can trick it and trap it, but it'll never stay still for long. And so that means I can't stay still for long either. I have places to keep things, but I can't stay there. And I have to make sure that my things are spread out. It knows to wait for me sometimes, hiding in the places that I built for myself. So I have to be ready for someplace new, and I have to make sure I keep lots of spare things in different places. Is it smart? Smarter than people, I reckon, he answered. What is this world like? There are savannas if you follow the sunset, and weird mushroom forests if you follow the sunrise. And depending on the time of the year, it can get cold or warm. But I mainly stay in the jungle because of the cover. If you're curious, he said, the first girl to die tried to run into the water and was eaten by one of the things that live in there. So there are more things hunting you than just Mr. Tatler. No, he said. The animals are dangerous but stupid. Only Mr. Tatler hunts us. I mean, other animals try, but they're just animals. It was a scorpion, by the way. A scorpion? I asked. Yes, he said. What took that girl? It was about 4 meters long. They don't have stingers, but they do look like scorpions. They're very tasty if you cook them right. Not very smart either. It's dangerous, but I think it's fun to kill dangerous things. It makes me feel strong. Have you tried to kill Mr. Tatler then? Oh no, Brian said, his face scrunching into a frown. You don't want to get even near Mr. Tatler. He's fast and far too large. Even though he's big, he can hide very well, changing size and shape to fit into strange places. And he's too fast to run away from. If you stay still and hide, or find a way to distract him, he might not see you. That's how I survived when I was too young to know any better. But the best way to beat Mr. Tatler is to know where he is and to stay very, very far away from him. I don't know why, but I found him convincing. He was so driven and he spoke with such purpose. Couldn't imagine a child making all that up. I told myself that I didn't believe him, that it was all just a strange disorder. But I still decided that the best I could do for Brian was just give him the resources he needed to feel safe. That meant getting him books, weapons, fuel, any random thing that he had asked for. He would often wake up at the clinic, stumble straight into my office and start reeling off a list of specific things. In return for me getting these things, Brian agreed to stop attacking people. It was deemed a sort of breakthrough by his parents, but I felt like a fraud. People acted like I was some kind of incredible therapist, but all I had done was buy a child's crossbow, knives, and water filtration kits. If anyone had realized, I would have been humiliated because deep down, I felt like I secretly believed some element of this story. But it worked.
Who knows what's real and what's not?
Brian and I had developed a close bond, and a retired man's love for history. Strangely, he reminds me of my father who once broke a rabbit's neck after I brought it to him with a broken leg. In the hope of giving Brian some kind of education, I began taking him out on various field trips. One of the most insightful of these trips involved the Natural History Museum. Brian particularly enjoyed learning about how people survived pre-agriculture. But it was after we had passed a display from the Devonian period that he stopped to stare at some artwork showing a muddy brown amphibian. It was meant to be one of the first invertebrates to migrate onto land, some hundreds of millions of years ago. Huh, he grunted. "What's wrong?" I asked. "The color's wrong," he said, gesturing to the strange-looking salamander. "They change depending on the season, but they never look like that." And then he took a sweeping look around the various things in that room. "Who would have thought?" he muttered to himself. He later made me buy a book from the gift shop that showed all the things in that particular display. And then that night before falling asleep, he came to me and carefully pointed out a fossilized plant that had been circled with a red pen. I didn't have a clue what he was trying to communicate with me until he came into my office the following morning. He walked up to me and placed something cold and soft in my open palm. When I looked down, I saw the perfect living replica of the flower from the book. Could you take a camera with you?" I asked, barely able to even grasp the staggering conclusion I was slowly reaching. "What would I use that for?" he said, perplexed by my request. "I don't need a camera, I need more rope." And with that implicit request, he returned to his room to gather his things and left me alone with my shattered mind. Obviously, I obliged. But for the next few weeks, I started to slowly come to terms with the strange possibility that Brian's story was legitimate. I secretly tasked a few close friends to perform analyses on some items I had asked Brian to bring back with him. 2 of them have since stopped speaking to me, believing me to be a fraud. And the third told me that it was a miraculous prank. A fourth reported me for an ethics violation,
Oh, dang.
saying that I had clearly taken part in illegal cloning research. They wouldn't elaborate on their methods, but they claimed that the plant material that I had given them was clearly a genetic facsimile of a prehistoric fern. I don't know how they had known that for certain, but I might not be the only one with secret projects. Shortly after this, Brian's parents went missing and he was brought into my custody. I didn't even suspect anything at first. Brian made a few comments during one session, but that was about it. "Are you real?" he would ask. "Yes," I replied. "I thought so," he said with a nod. "My parents were real too." I still don't know why it didn't occur to me to be alarmed. I knew deep down that I had never made true progress with Brian. What I had done was appease a young man with all the hallmarks of psychopathy. Even as he made utterly bizarre and out-of-character signs of affection to one of the research assistants, randomly taking her hand and telling her how much he had missed his parents, I never suspected that he was being deliberately manipulative of us all. It happened at 3 a.m. I'm not allowed in the clinic right now. No one is. But I wouldn't go in there if somebody put a damn gun against my head. I was asleep on the cot in my office when I was suddenly awoken by a damp explosion. After I had dressed, I stumbled out into the corridor with growing alarm. Just down the hall is Brian's room with the large one-way mirror, where he would normally be sound asleep. But when I fumbled my way into the corridor, I still groggy, all I saw in that room was darkness with the outline of a young child's back pressed against the glass. I ran to the door and I threw it open, crying out as an ankle-high flood of blood and gore poured out of the room. I pushed it open anyway and sloshed inside where it was completely black. The air was damp and hot, and it smelled of copper and meat. I couldn't see anything within, not even my own hands. Turning around to face the door, I saw Brian, his silhouette backlit by faint light that passed through the one-way mirror. His eyes were wide with terror, and I could hear him as he hyperventilated. What I saw, momentarily reflected in that mirror, was unspeakable. I still can't rightly explain it. Even now, I couldn't do it. I think Brian did the best job. Like an insect's god. Somehow you knew that straight away. Its beady black eyes and a rigid carapace spoke of a strange and ancient intellect. My body, on some evolutionary instinct, acted without thought. It was like I was physically repelled by the sight of that thing lunging from the darkness. I reached out and I grabbed Brian, shaking him from his strange trance. In less than a fraction of a second, his eyes fixed on me, and we both ran out of that room so fast, he practically dragged me half the way. He thundered down the stairs and I went after him, and we both burst out of the building where he collapsed out of the pavement. After a few seconds of him catching his breath, Brian finally told me. I said it was good at hiding. I was in shock. How? I stuttered. It never made sense to me, he said. It's over there with no one to hunt. But what if you could come here? There's lots of people to hunt here. It just needed a way to come through. And that's why it wanted us kids so bad. We can take things back and forth. What is it? I asked. It's Mr. Tatler, Brian said, looking at me like I was stupid. I knew I couldn't keep going forever. I could hide well, but not for the rest of my life. And once all the other kids were gone, I had no more distractions. I tried taking my parents across, but they didn't last long either. What I really needed was for you to bring it here and to have somebody to distract it on this side. I looked at Brian horrified. The assistant, I gasped. Poof, he said, and he mimicked an explosion. I asked her to sit with me. I'm surprised she didn't notice. It got her good. I think that's why it left me. I think that after all these years, we finally reached a compromise. This makes so much more sense. I can be over there, alone, and it can be over here with people. Brian then looked at me with what I can only describe as the look of a mercy killer. It's good you got away. I didn't think you would be so quick. But you won't be quick enough, for long enough. That's always the problem. It enjoys the long hunt. And because you got me out of here, I suppose I can give you some help. I would stay out of dark places, he said with a grim smile. It's very good at hiding. I've spent all day being questioned by the police and others. It's all gone so fast that I can't even process it all. Now that they've left me alone, I've spent every second of the last 2 hours researching this thing. I find references, some old ones, that maybe make some sense, but I don't know. I just know that I'm alone in my house, and it's getting darker, and when I look outside, Jesus, it is good at hiding.
Alright. I'm telling you, that was a good story. For real. Well, that was the end of that video. Shit. Can't even see me. Hold up. Now it's dark for real. Let me stop. But for real, hope you enjoyed that video. That little scary video. I actually liked it. I really did like it. Ain't gonna lie, eerie. That's what I like. So, if you got any ideas, anything you want me to react to, just leave it down in the comments below, and then I will react to it. Because you know, that's what I do. That's what I was born to do. That's what I was meant to do. It's my soul. My soul. Let me stop. But for real, time to wolf on out of here. I really don't like that. If you got any ideas, leave that in the comments too. God damn. Alright, I'll see you whenever Honestly, probably in the next few minutes. Probably do back-to-back videos. We'll see. We're out. Nah, we're going. Fuck it, we're out.